Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Grow Where You're Planted. Come take a walk on the wild side. Can you identify our furry friends from the clues they leave behind? In Tales and Trails, I will be searching for signs of wildlife in the freshly fallen snow while I stay safe at home. Well, we just had a huge snowstorm last night, and the snow was nice and fresh today, but in the next few days you may see some tracks of different mammals walking around outside your house or your apartment. And so I thought this would be a good time to talk about how you can discover what kind of animals are out there from the clues they leave behind. Now, we don't always see these furry critters. Some of them are very small, like mice, or they live underground, like moles, and many of them are nocturnal creatures, like your possums and your raccoons, but we can still know that they've been around, their presence. So let's take a look tonight at some of the clues. Mostly in the winter, what you're going to see is tracks in the snow. And so this is a good time to learn about the different types of animal tracks. So let's take a look here. Now, all of these pictures that I've taken were from around my own yard, the different little creatures that visit us. I have groundhogs and different kinds of squirrels, the deer, of course. I have raccoons and possums and mice. So I'm sure there's also coyotes and foxes out there, but I haven't seen those or recorded them. Also little rabbits. So let's take a look at some of the tracks and discuss how you can identify these animals from their patterns. Now you have your zigzaggers, and they're your perfect walkers. They walk very carefully to conserve energy. Their rear paw or hoof will land in the spot where their front paw previously fell. And this gait leaves a zigzag pattern. Then you have the waddlers, who appear to move one side of their body and then the other side when they walk. They kind of lumber. Their rear foot does not land in the print of the front foot. Bounders place their front feet down, and in one motion they leap forward by lifting up their front feet and putting their rear feet in the exact spot where the front feet have landed. And last of all, you have the hoppers, and they move by placing their rear feet slightly ahead of their front feet and pushing off so their front feet land first and their back feet land in front. And this is a pattern of leapfrogging that's found in rabbits and rodents. Zigzaggers, waddlers, bounders, and hoppers. The zigzaggers include your deer, moose, fox, coyote, bobcat, your dogs, and your cats. Waddlers are skunks, woodchucks, raccoons, beavers, porcupines. Fortunately, we don't have bears around here. The bounders are otters and weasels. And the hoppers are your rabbits and rodents, like your mice, red squirrels, and chipmunks. So that's the first thing you want to do, is to look at what kind of pattern those hoof prints or the paw prints have made, and that kind of narrows down what kind of animal you're in a general group. Okay, it's a pattern that zigzags. You saw some of those long lines that almost looked like they were one continuous line. I had watched a documentary one time, and it was on the caribou. And what they saw was that when there's snow and the caribou are making their trek, they walk behind each other. And it's very efficient because the one in front cuts through the snow and all the others follow in that zigzag pattern. So there's a logic to that. Now, once you have narrowed down what kind of pattern, now you want to refine your search by looking at what kind of paws or hoof prints, and you want to look up closer. So some of the things you want to look at when you do that, you want to count how many toes in the case of paws, and the shape of the pads of on those paws, and also the length and the width. You want to kind of get a determination by size. And when you look at these prints, you want to go and look at a number of them along the pathway to make sure you have actually counted the right number of toes, and to get an idea of what the shape of the pad is. Is it triangular? Is it round? These are very important things in identifying your little mammals. See, here we have big prints in front, smaller prints in back. That looks like it could be possibly a raccoon with the longer fingerprints. And here we have rabbits, where the big front paws are in back and the little ones in front. So you look at the shape of the heel pad, the length and width of that, also the number of toes, the size of the heel pad in relation to the toes, and the shape and direction. Like possums' back toes, they have like a little thumb that points backwards to help them climb trees. So there are other ways to identify animals without having them present. And we're going to look at a few of those. You can, if you see burrows or mounds, tunnels, and holes in your backyard, that gives you an indication of what kind of animals are about. Like here we have groundhog. They're really, really big holes. They make tunnels. This is a mole mound. And this is a groundhog hole that went under the foundation of my house, but we were able to plug that up. I'm sure everybody around here has had that problem. If you look at damage to your trees and plants, deer like to eat the bark, and the males like to rub their antlers on the trees. So that's another thing you can look at for signs of animals. Scat is your animal droppings, and you can learn a lot from these. This is deer droppings. They look almost like, I hate to say it, raisinets, but they do. This looks like it might have been from a cat. It looks like there's some fur in there. And this has mulberry seeds, so it might have been from something like a raccoon or another vegetable-eating animal. The nests up in the trees, after the leaves fall off, you'll see a lot of squirrel nests that are made out of leaves. And they also like to live in cavities in the trees. And I have one out in my backyard that is really popular with the squirrels. I've seen like 2 or 3 of them hide in there at a given time. So these are all things you can look for as clues to what kind of mammals you might have visiting you here in Southfield. Now we're going to look here in a moment at some of the animals or mammals that you might encounter. And I want to point something out, and that is that we do share our space with these woodland critters. And what has happened over the last several years, and it's not just here in Southfield, it's everywhere, as there is more development, as people start to move farther out into the country, they cut down the wooded lots, they flatten out the fields and the meadows. And what happens is that all these animals are losing their homes. They're losing their habitats. So where are they going to go? So naturally, they come into our neighborhoods. Like when I moved here to Southfield, I never saw deer. And then about 10 years ago, I started seeing 1 or 2 come to the lot next door, and whoa, how enchanting. But now it's like no big deal. People see them everywhere. I have them look in my living room window. So this is what has happened as these poor animals lose their habitat. They have nowhere to go but to come into our neighborhoods. And we're going to have to learn how to coexist with them. We can learn ways to maybe discourage them. And sometimes, on rare occasions, you may have to have them removed. But that's a program in itself. So we're not going to discuss that right now. Let's just look at some of the little critters and what happens when they're living in the same area that we are. This is a fox squirrel. They're the most prevalent around here. And this one's eating a Papa Romano pizza, which is not good for it. And here's a doe, white-tailed deer. They love to eat the bird seed. That's why she's visiting. And the little black squirrels are actually invading the fox squirrels areas now. And this is a little red squirrel. They are little demons. They dig holes. They chew wood. Chipmunk, they also like to dig holes, which is kind of frustrating. And these are the worst, the groundhogs. They don't just dig tunnels, they climb trees. And here's a little rabbit, of course. And let's see, skunks. Skunks are nocturnal creatures, and they're very shy, and they actually are very good at eating grubs and such. Raccoons are also nocturnal, and this one we had to capture because it was living up in our attic. And that was a very interesting story because we caught it in the live cage, her in the live cage, by putting something that, like maybe a leftover rib or some fruit, something that was very appealing. And once we caught her, we had to call the animal removal guy. In this case, I called Barry, who was really good. He came and took one look and went, oops, she's either going to have babies or she's already had them because her nipples were showing. And so what he told us he would do is he takes them out to the airport where there's a big old farm, and he releases the animals there, and then he marks the spot where he releases them with the GPS. And then he said, now in the next 24 hours or so, if she had babies, they're going to start to cry because they want to nurse. And sure enough, my son heard them within the next day, and he and my daughter had to go up and find exactly where they were in the roof of the garage, cut into it, and they took out 2 little babies. And when my son went to close up the roof, there was another runt in there that he got out. And we called Barry. He came back and he said, what you're going to do is put them in a cardboard box, and I will take them back to the exact spot where I left the mom. And she's not going to go very far. And when she hears those babies, she's going to come and dig into that box and get them. So we rescued them, but that sometimes you might have to do that. You might have to have them removed because they can be very destructive. So there you have it. You can be looking right now in the next few days through the snow to see what kind of tracks were left behind. It's kind of a fun thing to do. And I would strongly suggest that when you do this, you are going to want to have some guides to look at those paw prints, those hoof prints, and to be able to identify them. And this is where the Southfield Library can be of some help, because before you go out and buy a guide, you can kind of test drive it. And I'm going to show you now, as I close the program, some of the books that we have in our collection. And at the bottom of each book cover is the call number, so you can call in to the librarians and have them pull them from the shelf. If it has a J in front of it, of course, it's a juvenile book. And what I have found in the past is that if you want to start learning a new topic, it's really good to start in the kids section because they have descriptions and explanations on a very simple, straightforward level. So it's a good way to start learning about a topic. And then if you want to delve deeper, of course, then you can move up to the adult reference books. So as I close out tonight, especially now with all the snow, and we want to stay safe at home, and in the meantime, grow where you're planted.